over Broadway.
It's another episode of Bits Over Broadway.
Bits Over Broadway.
We're back.
We're always back.
With another episode.
Wow, we're in it.
Connor, any biz?
No, none at all. And I don't even have a good segue for this episode. I had an amazing one for Violet.
For our Violet episode. I've got one. It's
go for it.
The story that is scarily relevant to today.
Yikes. Go off.
I'm upset and I'm mad about it.
Okay.
But let's get into our guest. Connor,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So our guest is an amazing satire and comedy writer. She's been published in McSweeney's and Weekly Humorist and The Belladonna.
Snaps.
We are in the same writing group, so
Okay,
we've
brag.
seen a lot of each other.
So you're fame adjacent.
So
okay.
just a little bit. She's a very good friend. Her name is Kate Herzlin. Welcome to the pod.
Yay!
I'm so glad to be here.
Yay. Thank you. We're so happy that you could come and join us in this ridiculous venture that we're trying.
I'm thrilled. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the show we're doing this week is Cabaret.
Yes.
Very excited.
Yeah.
I had never seen it or listened to it all the way through
Yeah.
before we decided to do it for this show. And it was real wild to me, I'll be honest.
I can imagine.
I told Connor, I was like, wow, I've actually, the only songs I know from Cabaret are Cabaret or Willkommen and Cabaret. And then I was listening to the soundtrack. I was like, I actually know every song from Cabaret. I just didn't know they were from Cabaret. That one's on me.
Right.
So
Did you think they were from something else?
yeah, I just was like, oh, they're musical theater songs, but I like had no,
From no musicals.
context for it.
They just exist.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah, truly just existing in a songbook somewhere that someone auditions.
Uh-huh.
with. Like the first time I heard maybe this time
Oh, sure.
was in our musical theater class in college.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait.
And
Because
Jim
we were
Miller.
in the same class.
yeah, and I thought it was like a Barbara
Yeah.
Streisand song.
To
I
be
mean-
fair, that song also doesn't really belong in that show.
Right.
Mm.
So, like,
Okay.
that's fine.
That's right.
And, like,
because-
wasn't in the original.
I was going to say,
Correct.
Yeah.
because it was written for the movie and then they added it to the revival.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
didn't
it's a
they?
great song, but,
Yeah.
like, doesn't belong.
But
Absolutely.
does it fit the Cabaret
Yeah,
thing?
it
It's not. It doesn't fuck nearly as much as the other songs.
No.
All the other songs.
You can
fuck.
tell.
Yeah.
The other songs fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, so Connor, facts and figs.
Facts and figs.
Wait.
Oh,
Okay, Mitch is going to drop in facts and figs in there.
oh yeah. Okay.
He's going to do the drop.
He's going to do the clean
Hold
drop.
for bumper. Go.
Okay. So there's so many facts about this show, you guys.
Well, which show is the real cue?
True.
Life is Witch Cabaret?
Yeah. We're
no
going to talk
one
about them
knows.
all.
There's 15 revival.
And every one of them's different.
Exactly. So the music is written by John Kander with lyrics by Fred Ebb.
Yep.
The book was written by Joe Masteroff. And it was based on John Van Druten's 1951 play, I Am a Camera, which was adapted from the short novella Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood.
Which was adapted from my childhood diary.
Jesus, I didn't even know that.
Published in 1933.
I'm very old.
Oh my God. It's,
You
yeah.
look incredible.
Thank you. You can tell from the podcast
That's
how
right.
good I look.
Exactly.
Listen how beautiful she sounds.
Podcasts are a visual medium,
That's
so
true.
like it's amazing.
Famously.
Readers, you heard it here first. So production history, the original Broadway production, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
We wouldn't know if you were.
It was November 1966 and closed in September 1969. It ran for 1,165 performances. Yikes. Then a production opened on the West End in 68. There was then another the first London revival in 1986. Then there was the first Broadway revival in October of 1987. And then there was another London revival in 93. And then that London revival was starred Alan Cumming, and it transferred to Broadway. And that was the second Broadway revival, which opened in March 98 and ran for 2,377 performances. Then there was let's see, that's 1, 2. There's a third London revival in September 2006, a fourth London revival in October 2012, and then there was the third Broadway revival that opened in April 2014. Notable cast members: Joel Grey was in the original cast, and he also did the first Broadway revival. Judi Dench was in the original London cast.
Oh, I know that.
Alan Cumming did the 93 London production and then transferred to Broadway for the second revival, and then he also came back for the third revival to be the MC.
So 93, 98, and 2014.
And 2014, yes. And then Michelle Williams was in the third Broadway revival, and then when she stepped away from the role, Emma Stone stepped into the role of Sally Field. Or Sally Bowles.
Sally Field?
Jesus fucking Christ.
You know what? We couldn't get through it without one fuck up.
It's
so,
true.
like,
It's
honestly,
true.
you really did a good job.
I did.
I'm very proud.
I got it out right in the beginning. There was also a film in 1972 starring Liza Minnelli.
I'm sorry, who is that? Is she a new?
I think she might be new.
Yeah.
You know, she.
I'll look her up later.
Yeah, I think she's. I've heard
she's a
like
famous mom, right?
I've heard she has a really famous mom, but she's
Nepotism
also
once again.
I know, honestly, these Hollywood types. Some awards for the show. The 67 production got 11 nominations and 8 wins at the Tonys, including Best Musical. The 87 revival got 4 nominations but 0 wins. The 98 revival with Alan Cumming got 10 nominations and only 4 wins, including revival and lead actor. And then the 2014 got 2 nominations at the Tonys and 0 wins.
Okay. Also of note, the film is famously the most heavily nominated and awarded film that was not actually nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
And it got Liza her Oscar for Best Actress, Best Original Song. So there were lots of big time wins. It was kind of Fosse's it was directed by Bob Fosse.
Right.
And he had really failed with Sweet Charity, I believe, was his first film that like bombed.
Yeah.
And then he came back with this and everyone was like, Bob Fosse, a genius. We love.
And then we came to find out later, total shitbag.
Real dickhead.
Real dickhead.
They always
First
are.
one in theater, though.
It's true.
Historically the only
first.
bad man.
And last.
That's right.
We've never had a bad one since.
We got it all out with Bob Fosse and we
It's true.
fixed the problem.
Thank God.
We
fully
corrected
did.
the issues. Yeah.
Oh, God. Just a quick synopsis.
Yeah, I made Connor do this because it's too hard for
It's
me.
okay. The show is set in 1931 Berlin as the Nazis are rising to power. Cabaret focuses on the nightlife at the seedy Kit Kat Club and revolves around American writer Cliff Bradshaw and his relationship with English performer Sally Bowles. Overseeing the action is the Master of Ceremonies, or the MC, and the club serves as a metaphor for the ominous political developments in the late Weimar Germany.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Do you want to give us some characters, Mare?
I will do my best. Oh my God, Wikipedia, so long, so many productions, revivals, and there's an entry for all of them.
Literally, and every tour too. There were so many tours. The show is
exhausting.
everywhere,
And they make so many changes in all of them.
I know every show is different. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, so characters. Sally Bowles, the headlining British singer at the Kit Kat Club. The MC, Master of Ceremonies at the Kit Kat Club, a leering, ghoulish, flamboyant figure. Cliff Bradshaw, an American writer traveling through Berlin. Fraulein Schneider, an older German woman who runs the boarding house that Cliff and Sally live in. Herr Schultz, an elderly Jewish fruit shop owner who falls in love with Fraulein Schneider. Ernest Ludwig, a German man who befriends Cliff when he arrives in Berlin, later revealed to be a Nazi. Aren't they all? Fraulein Kost, a German prostitute who rents in Fraulein Schneider's boarding house. Rosie, Lulu, Frenchie, Texas, Fritzy, and Helga, girls who perform at the Kit Kat Club. Bobby, Victor, Hans, and Herman, the cabaret boys of the Kit Kat Club. Boy Soprano, a young boy involved in the Nazi Party. Sailor, a client of Fraulein Kost. And Max, the owner of the Kit Kat Club, are all of the characters listed on Wikipedia for this particular version of Cabaret.
And which particular version was that?
This is the 1966 musical.
Okay. That's like
So-
relatively accurate for everything.
Yeah.
I don't think the characters really change all that much.
No, I don't believe so. I know in the movie it's flipped. Sally Bowles is American and the Cliff character, who's named Brian, is British.
Which is honestly bonkers.
It's crazy.
Makes no sense.
Well, it makes sense in that Liza Minnelli couldn't do a British accent passably.
But it doesn't make sense that Liza Minnelli couldn't do a British accent.
That's true.
I mean,
That's
come
true.
on.
You're right. Liza Minnelli's a star, and I had never seen anything aside from Arrested Development with Liza Minnelli in it, and so I was like, okay, I get it. She's like an old queen, and everyone's like, yeah, we love her. And then I watched Cabaret, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I'm now fully on board. Like 1972 stan of Liza Minnelli.
Like 40 years later.
Yeah,
50
exactly.
years
I'm like,
later.
have you guys seen Cabaret? Liza Minnelli's a treasure.
And this is not Cabaret, but this is just Liza.
Yeah.
When you have to look up on YouTube, there's a video of her from when she was at age 18.
Okay.
When she's on her mother's show.
Mm-hmm.
And she sings Put on a Happy Face.
Oh my God.
And I mean, she looks so different at 18, but also is exactly the same.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And her voice is incredible.
And there's a bit where she's like, how am I doing, mama?
Oh
like,
my.
You're doing fine, Liza. You're doing fine.
God, they're so
Oh my
good.
God.
Excellent content.
Wait, okay, so this is just also more Liza, but how do we feel about the Judy biopic that's about to come out?
I'm going to see it next
That
week.
is
I'll let
out.
you know.
Oh, nice.
I have
Yeah.
not
Oh, it is
seen-
out?
It's out.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'm seeing it on actually the 21st, which is in like, what, a week?
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure it's out. I've
yeah,
heard
it's
lots of people talking
Yeah.
about it. Maybe it's just people who have like advanced tickets, but
Pro-
I'm pretty
maybe.
sure.
But
Yeah.
you know, related
out.
as it sort of, because also Renee Zellweger was
Yeah.
in Chicago.
True.
Chicago was
Right,
also
right.
Canada,
Heb, what
Cabaret.
up?
That's how we get back there.
And that
Mhm.
exactly
We did
full
it.
circle.
You did the
Oh my
segue.
God. Oh my God.
I didn't even
co-host.
know we needed to.
New co-host.
Here we go.
We don't usually, but we're trying. It's a
I'm
new
ready.
thing we're trying out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
talking on topic.
Yeah.
We used to go on a lot of tangents,
Yeah.
and we still kind of do, but it's fine.
I would
so-
never. What a horrible thing
I
to
know.
do.
Very
It's so
strictly
bad.
on theme.
Uh,
So the thing about all these revivals, to my like brief reading, is
Yes.
that essentially directors can just choose from a catalog of songs and decide which ones they want to sing, because there were some songs that were taken out for the film,
Yeah.
and some songs that were added for the film that then got added into subsequent productions,
Right.
or taken out or changed who sings them and in what circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what an incredible show where you can just make up the plot.
The
As
script-
long
yeah.
as it takes place in a cabaret and Sally Bowles is there, it's all cabaret.
And there's a lot in the
Essentially.
script that's very minimal, like in terms of actually telling you what's
Yeah,
happening and
absolutely.
why, and like what
Yeah.
it might look like at any given time.
Yeah.
There's
Oh.
a lot of non-information.
yeah, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
you have some personal experience with the show.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So first of all, I directed it in college.
Oh, okay.
And
Yes.
loved doing that. And I actually don't think I've told you this story, but this is, I think, just explains a lot about me, which is that I'm a childhood cancer survivor. I did a Make-A-Wish when I was a child
Mhm.
Oh.
to meet Bernadette Peters to see Gypsy and to meet Bernadette Peters.
Oh, honestly, and I don't mean to be shady, that's the greatest Make-A-Wish
Right?
wish
No,
that's
it's
ever been
absolutely
made.
true.
I might, like truly.
But the day I was supposed to go, she was sick.
Bitch.
no.
And it's okay. Ultimately, I got to do it. Like,
Okay, okay.
like it still happened. She was really lovely, but that was later. So I'm not going to do a musical theater podcast and not talk about Bernadette Peters.
No, you
Obviously.
must.
Like that's just
It's
required.
insane that that's not a requirement
It
we
is.
have.
All
It
of your
is.
guests. But so then instead, I went to see Cabaret,
Okay.
which was the revival, and I think Neil Patrick Harris was in it then.
Oh yeah, he
'Cause he
did
took
do
over.
My condolences.
after truly.
yeah, not for the cancer for that.
yeah. Listen, that's
Fair.
between you and your
No, no, no.
the cancer. But you and Neil
I'm
Patrick
fine, it's
Harris,
all
I'm
good,
so
it's a long
sorry.
time. No, I know, and that's the thing, right? So I was already biased against the revival
Yeah.
as a child because I wanted to see Gypsy.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, but now as an adult, I have less of an intellectual biases.
Now you
Sure.
have so evidence
of-
to support your claims.
Yes, it's not confirmation bias; it's true.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just circumstantial.
But I actually did as a child watch it, and I was a pretty like precocious kid, as one might guess from that entire story.
Mhm.
But like I remember watching and being like, this feels like it's really dark for the whole time, and that's still my opinion as an adult about
It
the
is.
revival.
Yeah.
but
Yeah, the revival
Um,
is so wildly dark.
which I actually think is really ineffective. But we'll talk more about that.
oh, go all the way
Interesting.
off.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, for reasons. But yeah, so the script changes a lot.
Yeah.
Or rather, you can do a lot with the script as a director
'Cause it's-
because there's not a lot of information. I think the one that I directed from was there 60s London production or 70s
Yes.
London production.
The
No,
West
80s.
End was 68.
Yeah.
The
West End was
first
68.
production
I
of
think
on
that's the
West
script
End.
that I had
Mhm.
to
Okay.
work with. Yeah, because maybe this time wasn't in it.
Yeah.
I think Mine Air and Don't Tell Mama were both in it.
Mhm.
And I Don't Care Much was in it. There's like, right, so there's all these songs that kind of rotate in
Right,
and out.
right.
Interesting.
And all these things that you also see people do in multiple productions that you assume like it's just like how Sally's often just alone on a stage for the song Cabaret, just standing
Right,
there. It's
right.
not in the script that she has to do that. It could be like any staging. There could be other
For sure.
people.
Mhm.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's at least the version that I had to work with. Like there was no
Yeah.
It's not saying Sally alone in
like
the club.
you know in a spotlight at the
Yeah.
microphone. No, like you could do a lot with it, but
Yeah.
you kind of see directors make in some ways consistently repeated choices and other things that are obviously very different later, and and I don't really know why it is that it's that way.
Yeah,
maybe it's because there's this whole idea of like the canon, and like those choices have been made for that specific song.
Iconic.
Yeah, so like they feel like they need to make that choice.
Like how much more central the actual cabaret, like the Kit Kat Club, has become, because apparently in like original productions it happened a little in the Kit Kat Club, but also lots of other places. Right. They were staging in several different locations, and then in subsequent revivals it has like either taken place majority in the club or only in the Kit Kat Club, like all the action taking place. I think in one of the revivals, it was all in the club.
Studio 54 really helped with that. I mean, I don't know for sure if that decision was made before it was in Studio 54 roundabout, but I think it did make it really great that you could actually
in a cabaret setting.
Exactly. Yeah. That choice might have been made for a production before that. I'm not sure, but I just know that setting was really useful for it, and it really would have implicated you in like being actually at the club.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that, that's a cool.
Yeah.
And I would have been really curious to see what that would feel like if in a version where they'd made choices that were similar to like directorial choices that were either totally different than the revival made, or just like, or more like the original, what that would feel like to be in the club for that.
Right. It was really because I saw the 2014 revival with Alan Cumming.
I also saw that one too.
Yeah, at the American,
which is very similar to
it was
a revival of a revival.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
And speak on that.
Yes.
Tell us your feelings.
But I did like that they like, at least on, I think on the first floor of the theater, they like kind of did transform it into that nightclub,
right? And that's
where
what
you
they
had
did
like the
in
tables.
'98 too. Yeah.
And I really liked that because it gave you that atmosphere.
Yeah, and you order food and drinks, and it's
right.
But so you saw it in 2014.
Yeah.
I
really liked it. I thought it was good. I like the revival.
Though
I do think it is weird that you revive the exact same revival that
and I kind of feel like you don't get to call, I don't know, something about that feels like a continuation of the original, not of the original, but of the original revival.
Yeah.
So like,
no, really,
so
I
to
mean,
get
it really
to be
is.
like it's a revival when it's just kind of hit pause and then like made a few changes, and then did the thing again.
I think revival sort of implies like that
you're breathing new life into it.
We're looking at this through a different lens.
Right.
Now we've had so we in a different episode we had talked about Violet being produced in 1996. And like looking at that in a 2019 lens, even though it's not, I mean, it's 23 years difference.
Right.
Holy Lord, that's math is crazy. But like,
I can't believe you did that math so fast. I was like completely fucking lost on math.
But it is nuts to be like how different the same themes are. And so generally you think like a revival is, okay, we've had a little time, we've had a little distance, let's do like our take on it, our spin.
Right.
And then if you're just doing a shot for shot remake of the same thing you did, like what are we doing here?
I think that
Alan Cumming just needs a job for like a couple months.
He hadn't opened Club Cumming yet.
Yeah, that's right. He was like, I'm bored. Someone give me something to do. Okay, Alan, we'll just let you do a cabaret again.
You want to put on that weird suspender jockstrap thing again? Let's go.
And I loved him in it. And I think
it was really good.
But I'm trying to remember if the 98 revival versus the 2014 revival, if there was a difference in the age of Fraulein Schneider and Herr Schultz. Because I know in the 2014 revival they were like middle-aged, and usually they're old.
Yeah, it said elderly in the movie. It's completely shopped out to young people.
Oh, interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, the movie's so different.
It's really different.
Yeah, I remember reading a thing that they were saying they thought it would be more effective for them to be a little bit younger, like in their like middle age, so there's more hope. Like it's like the sense that like they really could have a life after this, but now they don't. I don't feel that way because I feel like having them elderly. I mean, just because you're at the end of your life or closer to the end of your life doesn't mean that your life is over.
Right.
And the fact that they, I think there's a more powerful moment. I mean, in What Would You Do, which is maybe my favorite song from the show, if not maybe my second or third favorite song. But I mean, it's brilliant. But that she's singing it to them with all these years difference, where she's like, you young people don't actually understand, and you think it's so easy to just kind of have the feelings and make the choices. But if you've been around as long as I have, would you actually do this? I just think is, to have the generations away to come at them with that is a lot more powerful.
Oh, absolutely.
Than if they're like, could be the mom,
Right.
Totally. Totally.
No, and I get that especially because that's the song where Cliff is kind of like, you should leave.
Yeah.
Like, you need to leave Germany because, like,
you gotta go.
You like, it's not going to turn out well for you.
Right. And she's ended things with Herr Schultz, and he's Jewish, and she's, but I don't think should come as a surprise to anyone that she's made this choice, because it's also like her whole thing has always been self-preservation.
Right.
And
she even says that in So What?
Right.
In her first song.
Right. It's like she's consistent about it. And so she makes a choice that's consistent with what she's set up.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to be shocked by it. But you guys are also talking about leaving.
Right.
So are you actually any better than her?
Absolutely. Now, this is an interesting question, because we talked a lot about, and I know we keep bringing Violet up, but we're doing a double header today. Peek behind the curtain for all of our listeners. But we talked a lot about in Violet character growth.
Mm-hmm.
There's like very clear defined arcs. Now I'm wondering, are there such arcs in this show?
Mm-hmm.
Because you talk about she makes a very consistent choice that is set up at the very beginning of the show. And I'm kind of like wondering similar questions, like, does Cliff do that? Does Sally do that?
And Cliff also varies per production quite a lot. I mean, a lot of productions made different choices with his sexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because like in the I don't know if it's in the 98 one, but in the 2014 one, he's like bi.
Yeah, and that's a thing that's changed in various productions. Sometimes they're like he's bi, and sometimes they're like he's closeted gay, and sometimes it's like not really that much part of it at all. And it's like, and that being a question of what the future is with her, if it's something where he really loves her and is attracted to her and wants the future with her, if he wants it because it can give him the life that he wants, not necessarily because of how he feels about her. I mean, it's hard to even judge it in a consistent way, because but yeah, as far as like and
that
the
also,
character's changing, because I think he does. There's a big argument to make about whether or not Sally changes in that show.
Absolutely, because she starts off as the headliner of the Kit Kat Club, and she specifically like she leaves and tries to have a better life with Cliff, but like essentially just like falls back in her old patterns. And when Cliff is like at like halfway through the second act, he's like, hey, the Nazis are coming, we need to go.
Sure.
She's like, no, it's all gonna be fine. I choose, like, willfully choosing to be ignorant and going back to the Kit Kat Club and saying we're all okay. And then she sings like Cabaret, and like it takes on such a different tone when you put it in that context.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also I don't think he's any better than her in what he's doing, though. Like, I don't think that he's looking at her and being like, we need to wake up about like and like start like doing something and taking action, and you're being ignorant.
Absolutely.
I think she makes a choice knowing what's going to happen, what things are going to be like, or at least to a degree. And I feel like he's happy to live in Germany until the fun is over, and take advantage of it, and take advantage of the opportunities there, and the fun and the joy and the sexuality, like the life that he has there that he loves, until it's no longer safe for him. And I don't get the sense that he cares at all about what's happening to people around him.
It's a similar I feel like they're both in terms of Sally and Cliff, they're both running away from the actual issues that are happening in Nazi Germany, or the rise of the Nazi Party. Whereas like, as opposed to being like, hey, we should probably stop this.
Are the Nazis more central in the stage productions? Like, is that more discussed? Because in the film, it's just like happening as an undertone.
Oh yeah,
but it's definitely not like informing anyone's choices.
Yeah. I mean, Cliff is also, he's actually
at least not Sally and Brian / Cliff, just choices.
So Cliff is if I remember correctly, he's like complicit in a moment, because there's like a thing where they're like, carry the suitcase, and and he's like, what is it? They're like, oh, baubles and things, and it's like, no, it's stuff for the Nazi Party. And he's like, and then but he doesn't realize it when he's doing it. But there's there are like Nazi characters in the musical, and Act 1 ends with Tomorrow Belongs to Me.
God.
Right.
At this party.
Which is the Nazi song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which isn't like really the Nazi song, but in Cabaret it's a Nazi song.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you sing it, you're a Nazi.
Basically. But and yeah, so there's sort of this kind of decision point that happens, I'd say sort of end of Act 1, where like they're at this party, they're celebrating. Fraulein Schneider and Herr Schultz are, like they're gonna move forward their life together, and there are these Nazis here, and like singing "Tomorrow Belongs to Me," and it's like, oh, okay, things are gonna change now.
Yeah.
And that's my my main thing with my main issue with the revival of the idea of it being kind of consistently dark the whole time is that I think that you have to. The show is so funny and is so comedy in that like you come into the beginning being drawn in the way that people would have been drawn in to the fun and like
the allure of
the club. And I think you have to not feel smarter than that and not feel like you're above it and not feel like you, even if you see it coming because we all know what the show's about, to still feel like this is somehow a different thing than what's going to happen, instead of this is also because I'm here, and I'm willing to set the world, at the door and leave my troubles at the door.
But I think that would be an interesting to have a current revival in the current political climate.
Yes.
Like, I feel like you can really understand people wanting entertainment distraction. Yeah. Like, just going full tilt into anything that isn't what the current political climate is happening. Yeah, exactly.
I
Just
mean, like that's
totally
I feel like that
diving
plays into
headfirst.
the way that Hollywood is being run right now.
100%.
Right. And if you started the show that way right now would be fascinating, right? And I think would be really powerful that if we all really felt drawn into it instead of like, look at them, it's such a seedy club. And obviously it's like the frame is kind of tilted, so we know something's wrong.
Something is askew.
I bet something's wrong here in 1931 Berlin. What could it be?
What could it be?
Right.
Well,
what did you say earlier today?
It's the Sound of Music principle, which is that if your musical is set in 1930s Europe and the rise of Nazism is ancillary to the movie, then the movie's going to be 2.5 hours long, and they're only going to remember the title song. So, like, Nazis are sort of part of it, but, like, no one's like, Sound of Music, a show about the Nazis.
Yeah.
You're like, Sound of Music, a show about that weird woman who takes care of, like, hundreds of orphans. Just
Are you talking about
feral
Annie?
children.
The Annie Sound of Music revival. It was a mashup of
that would be great.
It lost so many Tonys. It was so sad. It was nominated for everything but Best Actress. It was like that woman who played Annie and Maria. My God.
Can you imagine?
Amazing. But no one is like, oh, You Are 16 Going on 17 is actually a Nazi song.
They
Which is like what Tomorrow Belongs to Me.
But which is bonkers because it's being
She's in love with the Nazi.
She's in love with the Nazi.
But Tomorrow Belongs to Me is so ominous. But like, but I feel like you can see it coming in the revival from
a mile.
And I just feel like you have to laugh in it. You need to like be able to find so much funnier than What Would You Do, even though it's the same idea, but with like a very different.
But look at the context we're delivering it to. And if you're coming at it from I know how dark this is going to be, like you're not letting yourself get caught up in it.
Right.
It's too easy to be judgmental of every character's choices and decisions, and like you're going to stay in Berlin even though you know that this is going to be terrible. And of course all the like queer Jewish performers are gonna end up in like a bad way. Like we don't need Alan Cumming taking off his clothes and being like, guess what?
That's a whole thing.
Concentration camp. Like we know.
And I think it's that's
the implication.
And it's a strange choice to be the last visual of the show, because like that to me, when I see that, the thing that I'm just feeling I lose how important the MC is in being complicit in all of this, which is not as though you can't be complicit and also be
a victim.
Yeah, but that moment makes it about the MC to me instead of making it about us. Yeah, and the Hal Prince kind of brilliance, the idea of the mirrors and like let's make this about the audience and what your role is, and the movie does that at the end. It does, where you see it's like the audience and you see that it's like Nazis and stuff.
The Nazis start to so it's like pans the audience,
interesting.
And then there's like one guy with a Nazi armband, and then it pans to like another, like as it's crossing. Like their people in normal clothes are getting fewer and more like brown shirt, red,
right,
like
with the
red
drum roll
bands,
happening under
like,
it.
Yeah, it's this very, very like, so Joel Grey like leaves, and you're expecting like the setup. I mean, I haven't seen the show, so I'm sorry,
but
like the setup is like. In Willkommen is we'll say it in German, we'll say it in French, we'll say it in English, and then he says goodbye, and says à bientôt, which is French, and then goes behind a curtain, and then it pans to a mirror. There's this building drum roll, but as it's happening, so you're like sort of in suspense, waiting for him to come back out and finish, but then at the same time you're like paying attention to what's happening in the mirror, and there's this build, and then the drum roll just the suspense turns at some point when you realize it's just like now the crowd is just Nazis and it becomes really threatening and then it just ends. Like he doesn't come back out. And like that to me is really fucking powerful. Yeah. I don't need to see him.
And it makes it because you're the audience watching it.
Exactly.
So it's like puts you in the
and
audience
you feel
with those
it
people.
happening around you. You're like, oh shit, that's I'm like watching it and looking and that has as much of an impact as like here's my star, we get it, you know what I mean? It was just
I feel like that has more
had
of
a
an
real emotional pull.
I think it's more powerful, and I think it's what the show wants to be, is a show that's making the audience think about what their role is in all of this. Because if you enjoy the beginning and you enjoy the kind of humor of the beginning and you let yourself just kind of fall into it, then by the end you realize how that choice, what the results are. Yeah. Right. And that's
so in the Hal Prince production, how is the ending?
I think it's like that.
It's like the mirrors.
I think there's something similar, but I don't want to say for sure because it's been a long time since I've seen the clip from that. But that's more similar to what the idea is.
It's more implied. It's more just like what do you know what happens. We all know how this story ends. We all know. So
it's a similar thing to Fiddler when like at the end of Fiddler when like they're all leaving the village and you're like, okay, most of these people will end up in Germany and they will end up dead.
Right. And centering the MC is definitely in that last moment. Yeah. As the one that we're thinking about is going to be in the camps is I'm fairly sure is a revival thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And because there's another part.
It's such an odd choice because again, only having seen the film, he is not a central. I mean,
he's in the background,
a central character, but he's not a central character.
And I think that's really powerful. Like the fact that the whole show,
he's also kind of seedy. He's kind of a shitty guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we still are entranced by him, and we want to see more. And the way that he's kind of working us and working them in the background, I think is more like the way things actually work.
Yeah.
You know? So
I just think it's I like the revival. But now you guys are kinda like
we'll turn you bitch.
My own biases.
I mean, it's hard to not be just enthralled by Alan Cumming.
Alan he's a really magnetic character. Sell that character, and he definitely plays it as a more like ghoulish, like what is this interesting like creature almost?
Oh, I think Joel Grey as well.
I think Joel Grey is fascinating MC. I mean, I think that there's a way that he's almost a puppet. Yeah. Right? And
he's like a little dummy. The lips are
right. And Alan Cumming is not.
No. And Alan Cumming and the way that they do it in the 98 revival and the 14 revival is that like the MC is like very central to the plot.
Right.
Well, sort of. But because like this is
if it all takes place in the club, then the MC would have
they
more
like
of
go
a role?
back and forth between like the boarding house and the club, so it's not entirely in the club.
Gotcha.
But like the MC is still there a lot. And I don't know if they did it in the 98 revival, but in the 14 revival, Alan Cumming would just like be places.
Yeah.
Literally throughout the show. Like there was one point I think during maybe this time or something like that, I like turned and Alan Cumming was just like standing right next to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, hi.
Oh, okay. Because he's emceeing. He's just like
he's just like in the like walking among the audience and like he's always around.
Yeah. And I think centering him throughout it makes sense.
Yeah.
I just think centering in the final moment is an odd choice.
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting
like when it should be thrown on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of agree with that because while the ending of the revival is like very garish and it's like it does throw it right in your face of like okay,
and there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is what happened to all those people, and like the way that they do it with like the really harsh lighting, and they like literally leave nothing to innuendo. But there's that song, and I don't know the name of it, but I didn't write it down, but it's the song right before Cabaret in the revival.
I Don't Care Much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's the MC singing it.
Yeah.
And it's like
another one that has like no direction in the script.
I imagine.
Yeah.
But like in the revival, isn't it like a bashing? Like he gets attacked by Nazis and then he sings that?
Oh.
I don't remember, honestly.
He's not beat up in the movie.
Okay. Because I distinctly remember a point where Alan Cumming was like, he was like beat, and then I think he sang that song, and then he like introduces Sally Bowles, who's like coming on to sing Cabaret, which is like this big fun number, and like when you put it in the context of the second act of the show when all these bad things are happening, like it takes on such a different tone,
right?
And it's like everybody sings this like it's a fun song, and then like you put it in the context of the show and it's like this is not a fun song.
Well, but anyway, it's not a fun song. I mean, it's like the last kind of like 15 minutes of the show are so packed. I mean, because Cabaret, depending on what choice the director makes, she's either decided to do the abortion before the song starts,
right,
during the song, or after, like, you know, what at some, it's all kind of around that moment of, you know, that the song, the way, when I directed it, we were like, let's make it that the song is the way she's deciding.
Okay.
You know, but some people do it that she's like had the abortion and then goes on to do the song.
Yeah, that's
right.
The
And
film.
just sort of justifying her choice. Yeah. And it's a really powerful song with that context, right? Because she had this opportunity to go like do a different life, be and the scene with Cliff is so strange with it beforehand, because he's like, you'll have a new job, you'll be a mom,
he's like, you're gonna be home.
Jesus
she's like,
because she's like, what about my career? And he's like, you have a new career.
Oh my god.
And you know, and she decides it's not what she's gonna stay, and she's going to do this, and this is the life that she's deciding to live.
Right.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk more about Sally Bowles as a character. I'm interested, but let's take a quick break.
Sure.
And then when we come back, we can hit Sally Bowles.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's not hit Sally Bowles. We don't need to do that. We're not Cliff.
It's true. Yeah.
And we're back, baby.
We're always back.
Yeah.
That's all we say.
That's all we ever say these
just
days.
anytime we have to start anything, we just say we're back. So that people know to listen now.
I think that's actually the first line in Act 2 of Cabaret.
Is it?
We're back.
God.
I'm Alan Cumming.
I've always said that about you.
It's crazy that I'm not, honestly.
I know.
It's nuts. So we left off. I do want to talk about Sally Bowles.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Because I feel like with Cabaret, the emphasis gets put on the MC.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because I have become more like aware of musical theater in a world that's like post Alan Cumming doing the revival.
Yeah.
And so I think people are like, yeah, the MC is a major part of this. But watching the film, I was like, this is Sally Bowles' story.
Right.
Like, she's the reason you would come, I assume.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is Liza Minnelli being just like a treasure to watch.
But she has excellent songs, and she's there's
she's
so
a
much
compelling character.
Yeah. And I think that there's been a real kind of uncentering of her in the last kind of 20 years.
Real degradation of
her. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that what happened was that there's a sense of like, oh, Sally, the character based on like the original, like the real person was like sort of just like a seedy cabaret singer, not like someone who's uber talented.
Right.
Like it wasn't like Liza. It was like some, you know, just a woman at the club.
Right.
So let's make her kind of like flighty and not that talented and a little delusional to believe that she should continue with her career here and
instead of being a mom,
right?
Which is what she was born to do.
Destiny, right? And also, I mean, the idea of her giving up that life just seems. I mean, for Cliff, it's just. I mean, their relationship doesn't have that much. Like in the way the show is written, there might be more to it. Really, underneath it, they have some really beautiful moments together. But it always feels like it's what they represent for each other rather than who they individually are. It would be fascinating to see what their marriage would actually be like.
Right.
But the idea of a Sally who's not that talented, like kind of took over with the revival.
Yeah.
And so then they cast these people who are like wonderful actresses who aren't known as singers because they were like, she's not that good a singer for music that's really hard.
Right.
She's supposed to be a good singer.
Yeah.
So.
Which also takes a lot. I mean, it does take a lot of skill for a really good singer to sound like they're not that great a singer.
Exactly.
But it's just an odd, but I think that kind of removed her being the protagonist in some ways.
Yeah,
in
for
the
sure.
late 90s, and I think it's an odd choice.
I think her character in the film is like the original and only successful manic pixie dream girl. Like she is doing that stereotype before it was a stereotype and nailing it. And it's not annoying or grating.
That's really interesting.
It's just like she's just like fabulous and swanning about and is like it's visible that she's delusional, but she also has talent. It's Liza fucking Minnelli.
Right.
Like she's got an incredible
it's
voice.
just like Liza Minnelli, right? Delusional.
Swanning about and thinking she's a talent. No, but like,
I don't know. She was like really lucid always.
so it makes a lot of sense that you're like, I mean, not a lot of sense, but you're like, yeah, I buy that she is like, I think I've got a shot because she is talented. And you're like,
absolutely.
Yeah, people, I mean, listen, we are all into theater. We've met some people who are delusional and untalented. Right. You have to be both delusional and talented to be successful.
Exactly.
That's the key that no one will tell you. I've
Except
just saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars in MFA student loans. You just have to be delusional and talented.
Exactly.
And the exact right balance.
Exactly.
49.51.
But
48.52, you're done.
Exactly.
You're done.
You're dead in the water. So it's super interesting to watch that turn of like when she gets pregnant and she tells Cliff / Brian, she's like, I'm pregnant. I don't know whose it is, but it definitely might be yours. And he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to commit to this. I want to marry you. I love the life that we currently have together. And they're like laying in a field and he's like clearly thinking about something else. And he's like, I just can't wait till we're back in Cambridge. Because again, he's British in this version. And he's like, and you're at home with the child and like, I get to come home to you and this is your job. And she's like, yeah. And then she just is like, yeah, like you'll watch the switch flip and it's so good. It's so good. Like watching her realize it on screen and you can see that she's made that decision in that instant and then she has the abortion and then she sings Cabaret and it's like it is a really nice like the whole scene regarding her abortion could have it's so well done for being 1972. I feel like he obviously gets mad and he's allowed the space to get mad and she's like, you just don't understand. Like, I had to do this.
Right.
And he's like, okay. Like, I mean, he comes around. That is a really brief synopsis of what happens. It's much longer in the movie.
Sure.
But it's nice. It gives both of them a voice and full weight to each of their arguments. And then it's nice to have Cabaret, like, round that up and be like, she is committed and she's happy with the choice that she's like, this is the choice and I'm accepting this choice and I'm doing Cabaret and I love Cabaret. It's like, finding after a really rough breakup and you're like, oh wait, I did have hobbies. I liked doing this thing. That's so crazy. I forgot that I did that while I was in that relationship. And then you get back into it. You're like, oh yeah, I like really am passionate about this.
And then the hobbies are also like staying Nazi Germany.
And the hobby is,
you know how relatable that is, right?
Yeah,
you know, it's like you have a breakup, you're like, oh, Nazi
in
Germany,
2019.
it's a good time.
Yes.
Yikes. No, but it's true. You're totally right. And it's the and in that moment, she sort of snaps back into who she is.
Right.
She becomes international sensation Sally Bowles again.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, hell yeah. Like, I'm fully on board. Like, I was just such a fan of Sally Bowles, and that's not what I expected to be going in with the very, very limited and loose knowledge I had of Cabaret. Like, oh, I didn't realize this was a story about her.
Right. And I think it's interesting, too, like, that the questions that none of the characters do ask, right? That, I mean, Herr Schultz is arguably like the actually best character in the show.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in that, like, every other, and he feels that he's going to survive, like that he'll just sort of keep going and well, and he's willing to,
because he says something like, it will get better. I know because I'm German, or something like that. Yeah,
because
like,
it's truly how he feels.
Yeah. He's like, this is Germany. Things happen.
And
you
for
know?
people that know, he's the Jewish character.
Right.
And owns a fruit shop and oh my God, I can't talk about the show and not talk about pineapple.
The pineapple song.
Oh my God, the pineapple song.
Explain to me this. I don't know.
Oh, so you wouldn't know.
Lord, what a beautiful.
I wouldn't know.
And Married also. That song.
Married is a good one.
Which again, so much better when they're elderly and not when they're in their 50s.
Yeah, I kind of feel that.
Yeah, because really, it's such a triumph after so long.
Exactly.
That they could actually change and become
right
people
and
who
like
are,
become happy and be together.
And 2-room flat is a palace now. Oh my God. Okay.
And
it's a whole thing.
We'll get there.
There's a number in the show where Herr Schultz brings Fraulein Schneider a pineapple.
Sexual.
And
if you brought me diamonds, if you brought me
diamonds,
and a pineapple for me.
A pineapple for me. And she's like, you've done too much. Oh, I love it. And
oh my God. And the way she ends that song, she goes, I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's just it's such
sweet.
A beautiful
It's so
moment.
touching. And I wanted to jump to Schultz and Schneider when he said that the relationship between Cliff and Sally is so surface level, and I don't feel invested in their relationship at all. Schultz and Schneider, I am in all the way. Right. I want them to survive. I want them to succeed. And it's
Schneisel.
Exactly.
Love them.
Like you root for them so much because they have this such a beautiful, loving like arc of their story. But then in that second act, when things are not going well and Fraulein Schneider makes a choice that is consistent with who she is, it's just so heartbreaking.
And what's the choice for those of us who don't
to end
know?
it
Okay.
with the two of them.
To end the relationship.
Yeah, and the fact that no one the everybody's so concerned with themselves in the show, right? And like what their fates are going to be and are they going to stay in Germany or not? Are they going to get through this or not?
Yeah.
And nobody is asking the question of what's happening to Germany, what's
happening
to the people here, like to the people around us,
right?
You know, and
I think that's very indicative. I think that's really realistic.
That's what
everyone's saying.
And it's important. Yeah. I don't think it's a flaw.
No,
I think it's a strength of the show.
Yeah.
That you
that's real. You're not gonna worry on a large, like, we really disregard people who are like, hey, like there are some seriously white supremacist fascist overtones happening in America in 2019. We're like, okay, whatever.
Like that's not Nazis.
Exactly.
Like, no, but they're Nazis. And then
you're personally worried about yourself and your family.
Right.
And like I know we've talked like, you know, we joke, but like we're like, okay, so do we need to like get out of here? Like, do we need to protect our friends? Like, where's the line?
Right.
Where we're trying to find the line, but that's not the overwhelming like arc in our lives.
Right. And that's why you've got to get into the meat of the characters in the show and their problems.
Right.
And you've got to be drawn in like a fully, like I'm invested, I'm here for
and
what they're going
forget about the Nazism.
Because
that's
makes
when it's powerful. Because that's how it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Like that's like when you're not paying attention is when the world falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I just think that the show is written in such a brilliant way to structure that for the audience, to make you look at that and make it look what questions we don't ask when we get so invested in the individual and instead of what's happening in the world around you.
When we keep doing this, like, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I thought it was super interesting.
Exactly.
There was a line in the film where they're discussing, you know, like there's like a Nazi gets kicked out of the club at the very beginning, and by the club owner, I believe. And then I think maybe, I can't remember the song. Something very funny is happening on stage, where the MC is like hitting the women's butts.
Oh, sure.
Like on stage.
Two ladies,
He's always
two
doing
ladies,
that.
Yeah?
It's before two ladies.
Okay.
There's more than two on stage, but at the same time, he's always slapping butts. Frankly, that's his number one passion in life.
Truly.
But at the same time, it's intercut with the Nazis then beating up the club owner outside and leaving him like in the gutter.
Yeah,
and there's just this like throwaway line where someone's like, "Oh, the Nazis are a bunch of hooligans,
right?
And they're annoying, but once they kill off all the communists, then we can take care of it. Then we can control them. We're going to let them take care of the undesirables first, and then when it becomes a problem, we'll take care of it."
Right.
And it's just I was like, "Gah!" Like, what a fucking gut punch to be like, yeah, that's literally what people in power are doing. Like, that is how it works. And it's such an easy argument to make, like, well, they're not doing anything and they're only like hurting minorities. They're only targeting people that we don't actually care about. So
and I think that is a segue in my mind too to the song "If You Could See Her,"
Oh yeah,
which I just think it's like, I mean, what a perfect transition comedy wise in that show.
Sure. Oh,
you know,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Because you don't, especially if you don't know the show and you don't. It's just he's talking about loving a gorilla,
Right?
Is it
you know? Yes, and it's a monkey in the
right.
Is it in
and
the,
at the end he says
she wouldn't look Jewish at all.
She wouldn't look Jewish at all,
right? And it's like what do I you know, if you ever go to a stand-up show that's like a bad stand-up show, which I mean there are none.
They all are.
Happen?
They all are, to be clear.
All stand-up
unless you pay money to see a professional
right?
comedian, every stand-up show is bad.
And there's then there's that moment, and even when you do, and
there's
that moment
She's not
right. And then there's that moment where there's an offensive joke is made,
right?
And then there's audience that laughs because they think it's funny. There's
right.
audience that laughs, and offensive as in punching down, not just offensive.
Sure.
Right.
And then there's audience that laughs
people
because
that
they're
agree.
People agree. People who are uncomfortable who laugh
right.
because they're nervous and they feel weird, and then people who just all of a sudden they're kind of it's gut punch, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And you kind of see that happen in that moment with that
yeah,
song.
100%.
Yeah, and I just think it's such a powerful turn.
Yeah,
you know,
and
absolutely.
such a good commentary on what's going on.
I was just gonna say this. This is such a really
cutting.
This is such an interesting thing that Cantor and Ebb do with this musical is that they use the music not only to move plot along but also to comment on what's happening in the show. And it's so fascinating the way that they do that, because I was
they're so good at it.
Right,
they're
absolutely.
masters of taking form and turning it on its head to be the thing
exactly
that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Form is content, like postmodern geniuses.
Truly.
Cantor and Ebb, we love you.
We love them. Have you guys heard of Cantor and Ebb? Like,
they're great.
Oh my god, you would love them.
They get the Jonathan Larson Award this year.
And I don't know how I don't know how it's
I love
played.
that.
I don't know how it's played in the show, but for me in the movie, it felt very like not necessarily punching down, but like punching at people.
Sure.
Like it was very like sharp
it's
and
like
pointed.
Testing.
Yeah, it was very like, oh, I love her. She's a monkey. That's so funny. And then just a little cutting, snide, like, for me, I didn't believe that the MC held that belief, but very like, right? Because we're all pretending that we don't know Jews, right? Like, we all know that that's like en vogue right now. Like, we're all doing that. Isn't that funny? Like, you've been laughing and laughing and laughing, and now, you know, it just felt very like pulling the rug out from
which is a great way to throw it at the audience.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Because I feel like the punching down or up of that moment depends almost entirely on who we think the MC is singing to.
100%.
Oh, sure.
100%.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I loved about the Joel Grey character,
Yeah.
Characterization. Again, can't comment on the Alan Cumming, but it was very like, he is singing to this is all about being the MC. He is like making this a show for them. It's all very tailored to and catered towards, and I'm pointing people out in the audience and I'm getting in their face, and I'm like he doesn't have any fear. It doesn't feel like a show behind a wall. It feels very like you're in the moments in the Kit Kat Club. It does feel very much like you are part of it, and he's letting you in on the joke and he's letting you in on the show. He's just like a very good MC, which is the whole point of an MC, right?
Absolutely.
But like it really, really works with his characterization. It doesn't feel like he's talking to someone else's audience. It does feel very
and there's that whole kind of Brechtian thing about the whole show, right?
Oh, it's extremely Brechtian,
and I feel like that.
I think that's a bingo card somewhere. Someone's like, if they're talking about
let's
theater,
use the word Brecht.
Yes,
I was
we
like,
got there. We did it. It only took 16 episodes for us to get to Brecht.
No, you did not talk about Brecht yet. Is that?
I don't
we
think so.
haven't.
You must understand, we're very dumb. We're very dumb. We went to state school. We're very
we don't know
dumb.
anything about it. Except for we do know who Brecht is because we had to learn about Brecht.
No, I mean, we did do Brecht, but were we good at it? No, we didn't even do Brecht.
We did Theater of the Oppressed, but we didn't do Brecht.
That's a totally different person. It's Augusta Boal. So.
Oh, is that Boal?
Yeah.
Wait.
Idiot.
Did you even go to high school?
Did you even get a fucking bachelor's of science?
You guys, this is what Mizzou did to me. I'm so broken.
Shut it down. Mitch, chunk this in the trash. We're done. Call it. That's the final episode of Bits Over Broadway.
Look, all you had to do was say the word Brecht, and then we're sorry.
Connor's been flayed alive.
The fact that I didn't say Brecht in the first sentence of the podcast,
pretty incredible.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely correct.
Let's get into the Brecht of it all.
Please, let's get
really
into the Brecht of it all.
The fact that I said postmodern before Brecht, I think it's really
pretty incredible, honestly. Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I just have to rewire my brain really fast.
So we're gonna take a quick 10-minute break for Connor to read about Boal, and then we're good.
I'm such an idiot. Why did I think that was Brecht?
Look, they're similar. It's fine. It's because they
guess.
are similar concepts.
Yeah, it's very similar concepts. And we spent so much time, or I don't know if you ever did ITT, but
I don't even know what that is.
It's the interactive theater troupe that like
No,
so Mizzou has this
not.
thing called interactive theater troupe, and we specifically do like somewhat like Boal, like theater of the oppressed type thing, where we go in and it's specifically built to like teach tolerance and like open communication with for like students. So we would go and like perform for students, and then in character the students would ask us questions about like, why is this issue important, how did it make you feel, and that kind of thing, and then we would characterize, and the actors would talk about it. So like we did a lot of stuff about like religion and like religious bias, or like we did one about like sexuality, and like I was like, yeah, as a gay man, like this really fucking sucks to perform because I'm performing the homophobic character. Like it's really painful, and it's like a way to teach students about that kind of thing. So like I'm so like that guy. That's
Not
I
Brecht,
know that
famously.
thing. Famously not Brecht. I'm just an idiot.
But similar things, right? In that you're drawing the audience into a more active role.
Exactly.
And
exactly. Exactly.
And you're demanding that they're participants in some way, right? Because with Brecht, you're kind of revealing the machinery and alienating the audience to a degree where you're like, this isn't for you to feel, which is what I think the revival does the entire time. Is it's not for you to don't get all into the story. It's not about them. It's about you. And I think
not about the story.
And it gets really sassy that the way that my voice was actually Brecht's voice.
Yeah.
It's not about it's about what you're doing, what you're not doing.
It's too intellectual for me. I'm a real golden age bitch.
Okay.
I need the story to be the thing.
Right, but I think it should get there and not start there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one might say it's a Brechtian evolution of a show.
Oh
boy.
love that.
Okay, well, you're the new host, and Connor and I are gonna leave.
This
not
is
a
Kate's
real
podcast now.
Hello, everyone.
Let's discuss the Brechtian evolution, bitches.
No, it's not a real thing. I made up that term.
Right.
It's fine.
No, but
Truly not a real thing.
No, but we're gonna make it a thing.
Yay.
So
Connor's gonna go back at his MFA. He's gonna write his thesis
Listen.
on the evolution.
So that's why my wires just got crossed,
All
because
good.
they're both like highly political,
Yeah.
very like asking the audience to do a lot.
Mhm.
But I'm just famously a dumbass, and
That is what we
and
said.
they're both B names. It's not fair.
That's fine. I regularly get Brecht and Beckett mixed up, so
that
happens to me regularly.
Why would you ever Samuel Beckett can die in a hole?
I don't.
Oh, I love Samuel
Don't know our
Beckett.
Oh,
kid.
no.
Is he the one-
But I'm the kind
We're
of
fighting
person,
now.
It's okay. I hate
No,
you.
we're fighting.
But
We're
it's okay.
fighting.
Like I'm the kind of person who goes to a Beckett play and I'm laughing the whole time and people are giving me looks. And
Oh,
I'm like,
Is
it's
sure.
Beckett
funny.
the
It's
one
comedy.
with the trash cans?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you,
Mitch,
Look.
don't you fucking dare do that.
MFA boyfriend? We get it.
So we're going to talk about Crap's Last Tape. It's a 7-minute play about a banana and cassette tapes and listening to
I
the
simply
past.
won't.
This is why I can never
Let
go
me see
to like
Oklahoma.
truly. I can't sit through like Waiting for Godot. I can't sit through Endgame.
Neither can Godot. That's why he
That's-
doesn't even show up. Spoiler alert!
Like I just
I'm
can't.
leaving.
I can't do it.
You can't even Godot.
I can't even Godot, you guys.
Oh,
Waiting
no.
for got it.
Exactly.
I forgot it that I was waiting for got it. Beckett puns.
I hate it, Frank. I'm gonna be honest.
I can't stand Beckett. And
Wait, so I'll get us back to Cabaret.
Yes,
okay,
you
you
can
can
do
do
that.
that.
You got
I
this.
believe
It's okay.
in-
I got it.
believe
Here
in
we go. We got Crap's Last Tape. We got bananas. We got zany comedy, and that brings us back to the Cabaret.
Yes.
particularly the gorilla.
The gorillas.
Gorillas eat
Gorilla.
bananas.
That's
Who
right.
likes
We
it?
got there.
We got
Oh
there.
my God.
Bless. All right.
You're the new
You're
host.
the new host.
You're the
So
new
I'm-
host.
I'm the host to do segues.
to do cabaret
That's
segues.
right.
Bring it all back. 6 degrees of cabaret.
Exactly.
Reference characters that don't exist. I just gotta do. My pregnancy illusion.
But yes, it is very much asking the audience to
do a lot
be
of
part
legwork.
of this and to consider what it would mean to be in that era.
I mean, what would you do, right? I mean, it's just a direct, like, because she starts by basically saying it to this couple, right? And saying, like, you think if you were me, you know what choice you would make, and then it's completely about the audience. It has nothing to do with it. All of you who are watching me and watch me leave Herr Schultz, and I mean, not quite in that moment, right? But like, you know that she's doing it, and you're judging her,
and she's doing it because she knows the political optics of it, right?
She knows.
She's like, it's not
that she's like, you're Jewish, I won't be with you.
Right.
She's like, you're Jewish, this is what's happening in the country, and I can't risk my life for this. Because she knows, she doesn't have she doesn't really have political persuasions at all, as far as we can tell, besides self-preservation,
of course,
which one can argue is a political persuasion. But like, it's not as though she's here being like, let's get rid of the Jews, and I don't want to meet with you when I. You
don't have to espouse that belief to support that belief.
Absolutely,
or to be
complicit.
To be complicit.
Yeah. And I think that there is not, except Herr Schultz, I don't think there are any characters in Cabaret that are not complicit.
100%.
Yeah, no, yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
There was, so the Schneider-Schultz relationship gets kind of shuffled off to the side in the film.
Yeah.
And it becomes, so Brian/Cliff teaches English lessons for money. And he decides, like, if this very wealthy Jewish family sends their daughter, and another student of his is like, oh,
which is all
she's very wealthy. Oh, okay, I'll stay. And then like they start to all hang out, and they're all speaking. They're all doing English lessons together. And then Sally Bowles is like, "Well, I'll come along for the ride because I'm being a butt." And eventually, like, they get together, and she's like, "Well, I can't be with you because you're not Jewish, and I'm afraid you're a gold digger." And he is like confessing to Brian/Cliff. Right. He's like, the most ironic part about this is I am Jewish.
Right.
And I changed my religion on my papers when I came to Berlin because I knew the political waters were shifting, and so I said I wasn't Jewish, but I am Jewish, and now she's gonna think I'm a liar. It's like weirdly sitcom-y, but also like,
do they end up together?
They do,
right?
Yeah. And Brian's like, well, why don't you just tell her that you're Jewish? And he's like, and then what? She rejects me for being a liar, and now I'm outed as a Jew,
right? And
now I'm like in like all the people I know, all the social circles I have, I'm ousted because I'm Jewish.
Right.
Like, and Brian's like, well, I think you're just like not giving her enough credit. And like, I mean, it works in the movie because he does go, he like rings the door, like raises the house at night. It's clearly very late. And he's just like knocking on the door, and the housekeeper answers, and he goes, I'm Jewish. I'm a Jew. And then it like cuts to their wedding. So like it works, but it's also just like, what a casual fucking like, this guy's so oblivious. It's weird because he clearly doesn't like the Nazis. He's already gotten in a fight with them. He doesn't agree with what they espouse, but he's still it doesn't affect him enough, even though he's friends with these people, to be like, yeah, you maybe shouldn't come out. Like, maybe this is just lost, and for the like preservation of self, don't do this. Like, at this point, she's already had graffiti on her house. Like, they've killed her dog and left it on her doorstep. And like, she is suffering a little bit because of, obviously there's class intersecting that's giving her a little more privilege, but like, like she is experiencing the political shift. And of
course, like Nazi Germany, ultimately, if you're Jewish, that's,
right. It's going to come down to, listen, class only gets, like, there's no class solidarity when it comes down to racial animus, for sure. Yeah. But it's very like, it's interesting to watch, and he's just like, well, why don't you just like tell her? Like, this isn't like you lied about how old you were, and now you're coming clean. Like, he's like, hey, should I do this? Because maybe it will get me killed. And the guy's like, you know what? Just do it.
The movie's a lot.
Just like, fuck it. I'm like, oh, I'm really judging you for that, Brian/Cliff. Like, let's be a little more like, it's not this love trumps all thing, which I think is so interesting in the Schneider-Schultz. Like, ultimately, when it comes down to it, like, I'm not willing to give it all up for love. For me, I've lived long enough without it. Love's not as important to me as staying alive and keeping
myself
And it's
safe.
amazing because the radical hope that they have sort of midway through, where they're like, I have lived I've lived so long alone, and I'm
Right.
going to actually try this and do the love thing and
let
like
myself be loved,
right,
Absolutely.
and be vulnerable in this way, and then it's like, no, that's not happening, and I it is so strange how much plottier the movie is than the musical. I mean,
long.
yeah. Well, there's
It's long.
so much more happens. I mean, amongst the characters, so much more happens. Like there's so much, right? I mean, like it's pretty simple, Schultz and Schneider, right? It's sort of like
absolutely.
they get together, like it's like the pineapple. They get together, married.
Yeah.
Now Nazis. That's
we absolutely love when Nazis crash an engagement party. We love that.
I hate it when it happens.
And it is a real threat these days.
Yeah.
It's a real.
I mean, honestly,
yeah.
which is like brings it back to the 2019 of it all, which is it's such an like wild time listening to this show in the current.
The parallels are upsetting.
Like truly, it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
And it's along the same lines of what you mentioned is self-preservation. You know, you are only really thinking about yourself, and then you have that.
But I do think it makes the characters much more sympathetic, I think,
it does.
than a
Absolutely.
reading in another time, like when we're closer to the point in history when we all agreed Nazis were bad.
Right, you know.
And now we've somehow drifted from that a little bit.
Because we didn't heed the lessons of Cabaret.
Exactly. But
Liza did not teach the children well enough.
Liza is directly responsible for Trump.
That's true.
Direct line.
Direct parallels. But
hot take, which I don't believe.
No, not at all.
It's
Never.
someone's hot take. Someone out there believes that.
Truly.
This is for them.
It makes the characters so much more sympathetic because you're like, yeah, I get it. Like the water is boiling and I don't know how to get out.
Right.
And like the only respite I have from just daily onslaught of like
is
garbage. Is to just like scroll fucking TikTok for 3 hours.
But then when you see the gorilla video on TikTok, right? Then it's like, now what do I?
Now
and it's like, but of course it was going to be here. It was never going to not be
because
here.
comedy is pop culture, is the zeitgeist, is making references to what we're all doing.
Right. And because I was coming here instead of paying attention, and it's not as though it's one or the other. But if you pick one, right, and you're like, I'm going to only live in the world of distraction,
absolutely,
and just and close my mind to what's happening around
which is
me.
essentially Sally's choice at the end, as she says.
But it's
I'm
also
fully
kind of
gonna
everyone's
make...
choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because it is. What if it will get better? We've lived through this before.
Right.
I think and
it's sort of denial.
Exactly. Like things were shitty in the Great War, World War I.
Right.
We made it through. It was horrible. It was a war like no one's ever seen, and we survived. And I think that's very much the like thought behind a lot of today's actions is
like we've lived through
the worst. So like some of us might not make it, but it's really easy to abstract that and not think about that as a human cost and be like,
absolutely,
your neighbors aren't going to make it, your friends aren't going to make it, like
and
not
like
everyone's going to make it.
She might make it through, she might not,
but she's not going to have Schultz at the ends of it regardless. And Sally might make it, but she might not, and not even in a successful like Cabaret sense, like she may not make it out, you know.
I mean, like Berlin gets like fucking ransacked
demolished
at the end of the war.
But I mean, and I don't know that there's a clear answer to this, but I'd be curious if you guys have thoughts on who. It's such a fraught question, but like Sally and Cliff, right? Let's do it. Sally and Cliff, is it worse to stay or is it worse to leave,
run.
To abandon ship?
I mean.
What political? I mean, like, does Cliff have any stake in it, or does he? He's an American, so he's not a citizen. He's not doing anything.
He
for
kind of
anyone.
like throughout the entire show, he's kind of just like, hey, like maybe we should just go.
Yeah,
right.
Like he's not like beholden.
But he's not
to
like
being there.
Schultz. You come with us.
Exactly.
Let's get as many people out as we can.
Right.
There might be a moment actually when he talks about Schultz leaving.
He does because I think that's
like,
when
you should come with us, and he's like, no, I'm German. I'm going to be
exactly. That's when
right?
Schultz. That's when Schultz says, "It's fine. I'm German. It will all work out in the end."
I see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and Cliff. depending on the production, right? I mean, is queer and like is obviously vulnerable in that
he's
way,
at
but
risk.
it's also not
And
a
when
thing
you-
that we talk about depending on the production.
Right. And when you look at it in the lens of Cliff as being the Christopher Isherwood character, Christopher Isherwood was a gay writer living in Berlin at the rise of the Nazi Party.
Yeah.
So like it does kind of, when you add in that context, that does kind of take in a, oh, well, he is kind of making the best choice for himself
Right.
in terms of, well, yes, he is preserving self. It's also he's making the smartest choice he possibly can because he would, if he had stayed in Berlin
it's so
with
hard
Sally,
because
would
you
have
know
ended
the
up.
end of the story.
Exactly.
Like to try and make those like guesses for yourself now.
Sure.
Like, do we get out? Where do we go?
And is that
Everyone
any
knows
better?
about this.
Right.
So
If
it's
you leave.
it's not even like the same as like 30. Not that information didn't travel in the 30s.
Right.
Yeah,
like people
absolutely.
knew of Hitler
Right.
and sort of Weimar and
Yeah.
all of that. But like no one was like, okay, is it really that bad?
Right.
Like, and I think we have more exposure to how bad it is now. So it's hard
Yeah.
to be like,
Well,
I think
it's
it'd be a lot easier to ignore.
Yeah, it's definitely a question of like, so, and this is just going into like journalism, you know, and
This is a journalist.
I'm putting on my
podcast, so-
journalist hat. It's the question of like when you are like covering international politics, right, and like international crises, there is this veneer, especially in American journalism, and when we're reading our own publications, there's this veneer of, well, that's happening on the
Far
other side
away.
of the world. And it's completely abstract. I don't know who those people are.
Right.
It doesn't affect my life at all, so I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And so
the repercussion of that is Ellen hangs out with George W. Bush.
Exactly.
that's how that story ends.
Exactly. That's how
Just a
that
heads
story
up.
ends.
And like and doesn't apologize.
Yeah,
for
and
it.
is like, it's actually good.
It's actually good that I
Okay.
hang out
You're a
with a war
dumbass.
criminal. Like, it's fine.
Just an update. This podcast stance is George Bush is a war criminal and he should be in jail. He
has
should be
blood
in
on his
prison for the
hands.
rest of his
It's
life.
fine. But no, like that's how you reckon with that question.
For sure.
Is that like at that time it was happening in a country that legitimately had kind of fallen off the fucking earth
And
after
frankly,
the First
how
World
is that
War.
different from America in the 30s and the way they
Exactly.
handled black people?
Exactly.
I mean, how does that differ in any way from the race relations in America?
Right.
Like Hitler literally got ideas from American laws.
Right,
Yeah.
and too, if you
Of
look at, I mean, in
segregation.
America turned away lots of Jews coming.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Trying to escape.
So, like, what are you?
Because of famously America First.
Yeah.
And how are you to know that this story has this particular
Right.
heinous ending? And should we always be operating on worst case scenario? That's what me and my anxiety believe.
Exactly.
That's how my brain operates.
Right.
Right.
But like,
And it's
yeah,
obviously what Fraulein Schneider's is too, right? You know,
Exactly.
Like, this is, I'm not going to
worst
take this
case
risk.
scenario. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
Right.
put myself
And
in
she
that
was
situation.
like, we didn't have, like, I've lived through hard times before, and they're probably going to be hard again,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to make it harder for myself.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm gonna
to.
give myself every advantage
Right.
possible.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes leaving's not an option. And if leaving's an option, then okay.
Right.
Like, yeah, it feels a little riskier here. I guess I'll go back home where it's safe.
Right.
Or at least it's the enemy I know.
Yeah.
And feel like I could handle
Right.
a little bit. Like Schneider is,
Yeah.
loneliness is an enemy, but it's the enemy I know. So
Right.
I'd rather have that than try and juggle loving someone and getting through
Right.
strife and hard times. So,
Right.
but as far as whose decision is more abominable,
I feel
I
like
don't know.
I feel like
I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's
feel
so
like it really
tough.
does come down to which production you're when you look at
Mhm.
it, because like the way that I look at it is like when you factor in the fact that Christopher Isherwood was a gay man and Cliff is that
Mhm.
character, and if you're looking at it in the revivals and he is played specifically as a bisexual man, like that
so could technically be passing with Sally Bowles.
could technically be
As straight.
passing.
Yeah.
But
or
at the
just
same
with her.
time, it could. I feel like he made the better choice
Mhm.
in when you look at it in that specific
Mhm.
revival. But when you're talking about another, like any other show, it's so hard to say
Mhm.
because Sally is not trying to change anything in the
No,
country,
She's not.
and she
she's
doesn't care.
absolutely looking out for herself and
Yeah.
her own
Yeah.
success. Absolutely.
But at the same time, Cliff is when you take out the bisexuality and you take out that concern for your own safety, he's literally just like turning his back on the people that he knows and cares about and says, well, fuck you, good luck.
Right. It's no longer. It was fun until it's not fun, and
Exactly.
I can't use this place for fun anymore, so I'm gonna leave.
An extremely
the fuckboy
white
mantra.
man privilege.
This was fun, but it's not fun anymore, so I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, to be fair, it's what I say around 11:30 in most parties I go to.
Yes.
I mean, honestly,
every karaoke. Like
this
is fun, but
anymore.
it's not
I'm
fun.
I'm so glad I came, but like I can't wait to leave.
Yeah,
It's my bedtime.
And I think really taken to its most extreme interpretation, everyone's choices are abominable because no one is standing up and saying, we got to fight
we
this.
have to fight.
This is the most important thing. This should be the priority. Fuck everything else. Every Nazi we see gets a fucking punched in the face.
Right.
You know, like,
because by the
we
time
fight
anyone's paying
everyone.
attention to it, it's too late.
It's too late.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, the water, like, you're cooked. Like, it's done. It's happened. The
frog and the
wheels have turned.
Yeah.
Like, you're already done for. By the
Right.
time you notice it, if you haven't been paying attention, if it's bothering you now, by the time it leaks into the Cabaret act, you're done for.
And the brilliance of Cabaret is that it all of that, I mean, all of the stuff that's like obviously incredibly serious and, you know, painful and
absolutely.
You know, isn't what you talk about on most podcasts about musicals.
Right.
Is
we've done some dark
we
shows
love to
before.
get some political shit.
But like
this
Nazis
kind
for
of
like
thing.
2 hours is a lot. But,
Yeah, it is.
But I do think that the brilliance of Cabaret is that it doesn't feel like that until it feels like that.
Right.
It shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
Right?
That is the brilliance of Cabaret. It shouldn't feel like
I
that.
am gonna say that you have turned me around on this. I still love the revival.
Totally.
But
Totally.
But
I mean, there's
I
so
do
much
get
about it that
where you're
works
coming from.
beautifully.
Yeah.
I just think that, and there's a lot of just, I mean, honestly, phenomenal choices in it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
performances.
Nazism is ancillary until it isn't, and then it's the forefront.
It's what I think the show is begging you to do, right? It's to sort of be like, yeah, it's like a thing, but like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, until,
do the Sound of Music thing. The Nazis are there, but like,
and then
does it really
until
matter? No,
it's-
they're falling in love.
Right.
Forget about
until
the
it's
Nazis.
everything, and you realize, oh crap, this is my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I let this happen.
Mhm.
Me personally,
I didn't
Kate.
keep saying,
As a-
hey,
Yeah.
hey,
Right.
over there,
Hi,
over there. Look,
there's-
Nazis?
Who else is probably
Are
in the
we
audience with
all
me?
Right.
letting this happen?
Who's
Nazis?
watching this at the Kate
Yeah.
Club?
Yeah, exactly.
So just
Mm-hmm.
remember that, listeners, going forth. We have
Truly.
to start calling it out.
Just
a
you heard it
timely
here
reminder.
first.
We have to start being like, that's bad.
You heard it
And
here
we should have
first,
been doing it for
readers.
years, but we haven't been.
Truly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's hard to like choose who is
Yeah.
making the worst
Who is-
choice,
because
you
they're
can
all
make
kind
the
of making
arguments
them.
for
But aren't you
self-preservation.
so glad I gave you an impossible
I
question?
did.
I
Yeah,
love
it's
that.
good.
Right?
She's
That's what this
she's
whole-
creating content.
I know.
She's
I am
here
in
too.
content.
You're invited
I'm-
back whenever
I'm
you want.
here to be the Jewish person to talk about Cabaret. Who I am, it's what I do.
We did it.
I connect with Herr Schultz.
Yes.
I too own a fruit store.
I love giving pineapples to my lovers.
It's honestly my favorite thing to do. They never see it coming. They're always confused. It's great.
Well, because nowadays pineapples aren't as scarce and that you can
It
get
was
them
so
anywhere.
rare.
That's
Really.
true.
But it gave him gas.
I know.
Well,
you
that
know?
happens.
Yeah.
Well, that will happen
That's
with
what
a
Yeah,
Herr
we
Schultz
actually
says. I'm
had
not just like saying
pineapple
that.
I'm not just
It's hilarious.
hilarious.
I'm not just saying that Connor has gas right now because he does, but like that's not the point.
Listen,
The
my
point-
gas
Yeah,
is my
Schultz to my
business.
Fräulein
My
Schneider.
gas, my choice.
My gas, my choice, you guys. It's
That's
all
what
I'm
Cabaret's
gonna
actually
say.
about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The revival, though.
The
That's why I
right
don't
to
like the
be gassy.
revival,
Right.
because the right to be gassy is the thing we're centering, and not the pineapple.
Yeah.
Right, and the pineapple is more important.
All right. Well, we've reached the point.
It's time.
Yeah, Connor, you can ask.
Kate, man in chair the show for us. Why do you love
Wait, what
Cabaret?
was that phrase? Man in chair?
Man in chair.
Like Drowsy Chaperone callback.
The man in the chair.
telling us about his
Do you know
favorite
Drowsy?
musical. That's okay. I didn't
Okay.
either. Listen to episode 1 of It's Over Broadway, The Drowsy Chaperone.
Okay, I'll pause real quick into that. Okay, now I've
And
done
we're
it.
back.
Great,
Okay,
we're back.
perfect,
Cool.
perfect.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yes.
man in chair, it's
Yeah.
just this is our segment where you get to talk about why
you
you love
chose
this show, why you
or
chose
why
this
you
show.
love this show.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah. So, I think that this show is one of the most, despite or maybe because of all the times that it's changed,
Mhm.
I think it's one of the most perfectly written shows in musical theater,
Yeah.
and perfectly structured. And I think that musicals are more than anything dependent on structure,
Yeah.
and that songs need to move us forward or tell us something new or be inevitable in the moment that they're happening. And I don't think that any show does that better than Cabaret.
Yeah.
And I think that each song is a really kind of beautiful opportunity to do something new with, and especially because of how sparse the stage direction is, but how much is built in anyway to the fabric of the show. Each song is a new opportunity to show us something new or remind us of something that we really should have already thought about and that we really should already be thinking about. And to hit us on levels that kind of start with the laughter and the being part of something and being so joyous to be part of something and realizing how fine a line it is that will cross over to being complicit in something terrible. And it's sort of like the perfect joke structure, but it's a musical.
Absolutely.
So that's why I love it. And again, you know, yeah, right. And you know, and as a Jew and as a Jewish woman, I just think that it's a really pertinent show and a timely show, and has a lot to say for where we are now, but I loved it before it was where we are now. I just think that there's a lot it has to teach us without it feeling like we're sitting through a lesson. It
doesn't feel ham-handed.
Right, you're falling in love with the characters and then realizing that falling in love and getting lost in are two distinct things that are very hard to tell when one is becoming the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Connor, man, and share this for us.
Yeah, so I really do love the show. I have never really thought about it as intensely until like this past week.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I'm so happy. And I'm truly apologize to everyone for mixing up Boal and Brecht.
I'm truly sorry that I wanted to make it into the Woods
okay.
reference. As soon as you said I'm so happy, I was like, we're so happy, you're so happy. Just as long as you stay happy.
Yes, you're invited back literally every time.
Why I did the alto part in that just now instead of the melody is how you know I was Florinda in college.
Exactly.
Is my tell.
She's a musical theater bitch.
Yeah, we know it.
Grew up watching the VHS of the production.
Certainly couldn't be me. Couldn't be me.
Greens, nothing but greens. Yes. I just took over your part of this podcast, Connor.
It's okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm obsessed with it.
Look, if I'm going to take over your manager chair for something, it's going to be Bernadette.
Yeah, it's fine. And if you want to read your Into the Woods satire piece that you read me anytime on this podcast, you're more than welcome.
If someone wants to publish
it,
I'm
truly
amazing.
Like literally, she read it to me. We had drinks at a bar a couple of weeks ago, and she was like, "I can't place this piece anywhere
because 5 people will find it funny."
It's hollering for this content.
It's humor for 5 people, and she read it to me, and I was like,
I'm one of the 5.
I am one of the 5.
I'm the chosen 5.
It was amazing.
Absolutely, like, new Patreon post.
Yes, Patreon.
Kate comes, she reads her piece.
I'm ready.
Yes.
Also, if you think that every time someone says, I wish, we don't all go, I wish.
More than anything.
Yeah, more than life. More than the moon. We all do it. It's
all
fine.
the time.
That was an interesting harmony.
Thank you.
I don't know. But
it's always off key.
It was something. It was a thing.
The thing
that
about
definitely happened.
There were notes. No one knows what they were. But
someone did them.
You could find them on a piano.
Listen, the thing about Into the Woods is if you're going to sing it, you have to sing it off key.
It's true.
Simply can't be trying.
Why would you ever try with Into the Woods?
I never have and I never will.
I know that about you.
Connor, manage your cabaret for us.
That's actually a Sondheim quote, I think.
I do believe it to be true. No, I do love the show. I'm really glad that we were able to like talk more about like the themes and the actual structure of the show and that kind of thing, because I think that is so important to this show. It's really hard to tear away plot without tearing the entire show apart. One of the things that I really, really like about the show is the music specifically. I love the way that Kander and Neb use music, especially in all their works. And I think this is one of their, like, this is like them at their like peak form.
Yeah.
And I really absolutely love the using music to critique the show, to comment on it, to make commentary to the audience and make the audience think, as opposed to just using doing it in the Rodgers and Hammerstein school where you're just moving plot along. It's such an interesting way to use music in a musical, and like you said, it's turning form on its head, and I really love that about this show. And it's one of the things that I really that is my favorite thing about this.
Can I say one really dorky thing about that really quick?
Go all the way off.
You can talk whenever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Which is just that I also think that with the music, something that's brilliant with it too is the way that that it leans on accidentals to
Yes.
tell you that something's wrong.
Yes,
Right?
because there's always that. Yeah.
Like that. Just always something not in the key.
Yes.
That tells you that you should be paying closer attention.
Right. There is
just think it's
something
brilliant.
under the surface that's going on.
Which
that
just
you
feels
need
kind
to
of sexy and
notice.
seedy, but actually something is deeply wrong.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's
Which
more
is one
to
of the
it.
things that I like about one of the things that I like about the revival at the
Horniness
end.
getting coded as villainy again.
Once again,
That's never happened before.
horniness
It's not
being
my
punished.
one hill I die on every episode.
It's true. It's very true. But
Maybe
that,
I just find accidental sexy. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh no,
It might not be a thing.
From the opening notes, I had texted Connor, "This show fucks. Like, it's a
Truly.
horny show."
Oh, this show is horny.
Yeah.
But no, it's one of the things that I like about the ending of the revival when, and I don't know if they do it in the Joel Grey version, but when it gets like that really dissonant chord and it like really builds that tension
Yeah.
as the final
The music all
view.
gets really screwed up at the end. of the
really
original.
screwed up in
Yeah.
that final Willkommen.
Oh, it's upsetting.
It's very upsetting, but it like is like you say that perfect.
built in.
It's that perfect like tension that you expect from.
And you should have seen it coming.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your
You've
fault.
been hearing the clues this
Right.
whole time.
Yeah.
You should have known.
And yeah, I think like I just really love the music of the show. They do such a fucking good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like you heard it here first, folks.
Wait, so what
Skander
you like
and
about
Ab are
this
good.
musical is the music?
I know it's shocking, right?
Radical.
A brilliant new take.
A brilliant new take.
Piping hot,
A
fresh.
hot
But
new
also though how
take.
specific the music is, right? Like so
Exactly.
many, yeah, there are like a couple of songs that you could take out and be like American Songbook, right?
Sure. Right,
But
absolutely.
but so much of it makes no sense outside of the show.
Right, which is
and
like
I love that.
Which is one of the things
Yeah.
that I was trying to say with Cabaret, and maybe I didn't articulate that enough, but like especially like because there's the bar in New York, Marie's Crisis, and it's a piano bar. They play Cabaret so often, and it's like this big rousing number, and everybody loves singing it, and they have so much fun. But when you put it in the context of the show and the way that
devastating.
it's a devastating number, and like when you take it out of that context, it's like, yeah, this is a really fun show, but like you're not getting the full effect of the song. And
I hope you say that to everyone.
like in the middle of Marie's
everyone.
Crisis, I'm like, stop.
You don't understand.
Right, whereas I'm at Marie's being like, why haven't we sung Cabaret?
Right?
This is
We do
how
Little Mermaid again. I'm gonna kill you.
Oh my God. So much Little Mermaid.
That's me after anyone sings I Dreamed a Dream. I'm like, you're not a French sex worker.
I
Do
am.
you understand the gravity of this song?
Exactly.
Like, chill.
It's like, calm down.
I
It's the
lived
song.
through the revolution after the revolution, and I'm here to tell
I've
you.
sold my teeth
it was
and
nothing
hair.
like this. I didn't dream anything.
My dreams were ash and dust.
True.
Even before she sings this.
So just know that if you're planning to come to Marie's Crisis, if Connor's there, he will interrogate your beliefs about the song Cabaret.
Life hasn't killed the dreams he's dreamed. Connor has.
It's me.
Dream Crusher.
Thank
Banned
you.
from Marie's.
Thank
We
you.
did it.
We love. Now more people are going to flock to Marie's.
That's right.
Oh,
Get
God.
out.
God damn
gonna
it.
get so
I
much
did
worse.
that to myself. Meryl.
This very famous, very listened to by millions podcast will inspire a
Look, since
flood
I'm
of business
a
to
new
Marie
host,
Crisis.
I will request that you just bleep the word Marie's every
Okay.
time you mention it so no one finds
Done.
out.
They're gonna
what
get that
one bar
Bits
we could
Over
possibly be
Broadway
talking
bump.
about.
Yeah. Truly.
Why are you here? Oh, I heard about it on this podcast.
About it on Bits Over Broadway. Amazing. Meryl,
Yeah.
Man in Chair.
I loved this podcast. I
This
love this
podcast?
podcast. I love this show. The music rules. Candor and Ebb are great. I do totally get what you mean about like the songs don't make sense outside the context of Cabaret,
Mhm.
but I also think the songs can stand alone,
Mhm.
and that makes them so much more interesting and gives you the
Mhm.
ability to take the song catalog and
Right,
just go,
right.
we'll do this one here and
Sure.
we'll do this one there, and this is the context for that one, and like it makes Cabaret so flexible as a stage production and makes every revival or revival of a revival
Mhm.
more interesting,
Which is
because
just the revival.
which is just
Just
a
a
revival,
revival.
but a
It's
few
just
years later
1998 for the last 20 years.
true.
Yeah.
And I think but I think what makes it so fun is that anyone can come into it, and they're such earworms. Candor and Ebb are so good.
They're so good
at writing
doing
songs
that
that just like get stuck. Like money makes.
Oh my God. That was my senior year of dance. That was our finale number for our recital.
It's so good, and Mine Air, like it's just in your head, and it's not just the repetition of it, but it is very like. Oh God. Like how are you not when someone says Cabaret? How do you not go?
Right.
I feel like
even Perfectly Marvelous, like songs that no one plays.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Are just wonderful.
Yeah.
They stick in your head.
They're very talented. Someone should produce their work.
Yeah.
Jonathan Larson.
Have you guys heard of this Candor and Ebb?
Somebody sign them. And
we want the royalties.
And now, having seen the film, I am all in on Liza Minnelli. I know she's a new voice. No one's heard of her. But I really think we should like really boost her career.
Yeah, you got it.
Sorry.
Does she have an agent yet?
I don't know, but I'd love to rep her.
Yeah. Meryl is now
me. I'm going to become an agent for Liza Minnelli.
Where it all began.
I just
being what we can.
I just think it's so good. You can rent it on.
Merrily Rep.
Wow, I can't believe we got a Merrily reference on
and
this.
it went right over my head because, as I've said before, I'm not a Sondheim bitch.
It's our time.
This is not fair.
I love it.
I'm staging a revolt.
I'm obsessed with it.
But you can rent Cabaret on Amazon Prime for like $4, and it's worth it. You can buy it for $13. I'm here to shill Amazon to you. But
Jeff Bezos, give us
do
money.
Think Jeff Bezos give anyone money.
Literally give anyone money.
But I do think that you can listen to just the soundtrack and still come away with an opinion of the show. But I think seeing any staged version, you can obviously YouTube clips of the revivals, and just like seeing it in context adds another layer, but it can stand as just a OBC itself. And I just think that's really like, I just love it. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I often come into the musicals we cover on this show very skeptical or not having liked them. It's pretty rare for me, unless I chose the show, that I'm like all in on the show. Yeah. And I just really, really enjoyed Cabaret. And it hit me like a gut punch, especially in today's political climate. And obviously the Brechtian elements of it were very important. And the Boalian elements.
Thank you.
10 out of 10 for me. Like, go see Cabaret. Very good. It should be part of the musical theater canon, I think. And I know that's an unpopular opinion.
That is a very unpopular opinion.
But which version?
That's the problem. There's 17 different ones.
And they keep cutting songs.
I know.
They're so similar to each other. Cliff has a song in the Why Should I Wake Up, which is much worse than the song that's replaced with Don't Go, which is also, though, like not the greatest song, like to Sally, right? And it's like, and I mean I feel like there's also because he as a character has never been consistent from revival to revival, so like it's gonna be, how do we anyway, sorry, this is such a tangent.
No, it's fine.
We love it.
Yeah.
But I just think the way that the songs can move outside of it and still mean so much more inside of it, it's just a wonderful,
it's a cool aspect of it for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Kate, anything to plug?
Yeah.
Where can we find your work
coming up?
Surprise.
Well, let's see if someone will publish Into the Windscapes.
I want them to so bad. It's so funny.
For niche content.
Yeah, truly.
Please reach out.
Yeah. I think I don't
social media, anything
like
that?
Yeah, that's that. Thank you.
Yeah, I got you.
Who am I?
Don't worry.
What do I do?
We'll get cue cards one of these days where I can just point Instagram,
Here's
Twitter.
Who you are. You forgot who you are. Follow me on Twitter at Kate Herzlin. I also do a thing that I didn't do last year, but I generally have done in past years, where I have a second Twitter account called Bernadette Sports, where I live tweet the Super Bowl as Bernadette Peters.
Love that.
So you can follow that and become my 50th follower.
Amazing.
On that account.
Yes.
And you'll be lucky number 50. I got a 50th in the recently lost one. And
oh no.
R.I.P.
But I don't know who was going through.
My
They're probably
condolences.
like, oh gosh, just this is the one I should
Right.
She didn't do it this year. I'm gonna unfollow her. But
that's
yeah,
on you,
follow
honestly.
me.
Not
It
making
is.
the content, they're allowed to unfollow you.
It's so true. It's so true.
Gosh.
Yeah, follow me at Kate Herzlin.
Yeah.
And see what funny things I have to say.
Always.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Connor.
You can find me at CRelia12 across all platforms. Also, I post my funny writings there. For the most part, been pretty busy writing. Been a writing boy a lot.
I love that for you.
It's been something.
Okay.
It's been hilarious. You're wonderful.
Oh,
You
thank
are.
you.
Connor's very talented.
Oh, stop! You are Meryl. Where can people find you?
You can find me across all platforms at Meryl K. 2 R's, 2 L's, and any at the end of K. And to follow this podcast, you can follow on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at bitsoverbway, bitsoverbway@gmail.com. You can find us in the Apple Podcast Store. You can find us Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud. Download, rate, review, like, subscribe. Do all the things that give us a boost, and tell your friends about us. And that's all I have. Bye. But at the same time,
yeah,
he's always slapping butts, frankly. That's his number one passion in life. True. But at the same time, it's intercut with